Have you ever wondered whether we are living in a society where, kind of, at least apparently, everything is more or less wrong about, but, well, no one seems to notice that, or worse than that, no one seems to actually care? Have you ever wondered how we live in a society where, rules, norms, and regulations have to be imposed on the people to actually live? And we call ourselves the most intelligent species on this planet, yet we are the only ones that actually need to pay to coexist. Don't you think this is nothing else than a result of, you know, unawareness and, ignorant behaviors that has led us here? Because ultimately, the point about life is life has to be lived in a perpetual state of communion with other beings and, of course, with us. But to most people, this sounds way too sci fi because they are too entrenched, they are too stuck on this prospect that being a human means being the best thing on this planet and everything is basically, you know, put on a tray for you, right? Because ultimately everything is basically served to you because it just happens that you are a human. And well, ultimately no one cares about anything else. But if one chooses to live in ignorance, therefore live unconsciously, well, wouldn't that mean that they will live actually separately? But in a world of 8 billion people, the question is, why should anyone be, separated? Why should people live separated? Haven't they lived separated enough through ignorance? Because when you are living unconsciously, when you are living in ignorance, you are only going to live in a perpetual state of survival, aka fear and, anxiety and stress and such. So many people are claiming to be stressed. So many people are claiming to, feel depressed. But the question is, one does not feel depressed. One needs deep rest because that's how tricky English is. English is an occult language, yes, and it has a lot of, hidden meanings and such. But in a society where no one cares about everyone else, how come there are so called authorities that actually seem to care about people? And, the only thing that they do is constantly push propagandas. And nowadays we can see in this world two big things, right? It's always the so called greenwashing, and it's always the, pushing of further agendas against people, right? Because don't you think that in a society where, everything is so fake that the truth scares people, don't think that if you do what society demands you to do, you're gonna be safe, right? And is it natural? Is this right? Right? That we live in a world where, for example, we don't know what the normal is, right? We have so many ideas, right? Contrasting ideas being pushed down the people's throats, right? Nowadays, there's so much push for so-called diversity, right? There's so much push for literally everything that can act as a distraction. And the question is, in a society where you are constantly being distracted from who you are, doesn't this mean that you will always live someone else's life? Because you're always gonna pay your attention to someone else, right? To the new football team that appeared, to the new victory of this, to the new concert that appears. And now in a society where, everything seems to shift from normal people even more and more, right? From people who live their lives day by day, and well, it's slowly and surely moving, into an Orwellian state in which everything is just command and control, right? Control and execute. The point is, well, is this society normal or, well, honestly, it hasn't ever been normal or it hasn't been normal for like hundreds of years at most, probably even thousands of years. It's just that now, for some reasons, it's actually the right time for some people to do their, agendas, right? Nowadays, we see all these people, promoting their own brands and saying that they want to reduce carbon emissions and such. And you see giant corporations, promoting the idea of everything being green, for example. In a world where, deforestation and technically destruction of everything that is pure and natural, do you think that these things are actually real, or, are you just faking that you believe it? Because, well, when you fake something, that's technically a lie. And, well, why would you actually live in a lie? Because lying is always, energy consuming. You need a lot of energy to support a lie. While the truth, it's just there. It just needs to shine, right? And it's always the idea of, culpability of the persona, right? It's always someone does something, but it's always your fault, right? Corporations have been usually the ones who have been conducting the most destruction of the environment, and now it's always a culpability of the collective, right? It's always something regarding the collective, because in corporations, usually people live in competition, right? You have to be the best worker, you have to be assigned that prize, right? You have to be better than your peers, right? So if people live in a competition, how come, corporatists always speak with we, right? It's like they belong to some kind of hive mind, right? It's not we, the corporation, it's more like we, the ones who rule the corporations, right? It's like our hive mind has decided this or that. And every time they start one of their speeches, they always have to use this we, right? We are on the brink of destroying the planet, but who's this we, right? Most people may lead to creating some trash, right? Many people may actually participate, right, in this, but they don't have a main role, right? Who's the one who actually controls the industry, right? Who's the ones who actually control the mass media, right? Who's the one who's the ones who actually dumb people down, right, and enforce living in ignorance? And when you have so many people living in ignorance, yes, it is also their fault, but when you are at the control of such devices, you're also using ignorance against people, right, to create even more culpability. Isn't this the same thing that religion did? And, well, most likely especially Christianity, because everything that humans would do, that was always a liability, right? It was always a bad thing, because you always had to live in fear of the so-called God of love, right? It's always these stupid contrasts that, people don't seem to see. How come you have to fear the so-called God of love, right? How come we live in a world where, everything is against you, but, people just embrace it, right? Just like Pink Floyd says, did you ever wonder why you had to run for shelter, right? In the promise of the brave new world outside the view of the clear blue sky, right? And it was always a promise of something. And every time the state promises something, hasn't it become clear enough that, it's never gonna be so, right? And nowadays, this safety is constantly being pushed more and more. This idea of safety and safety is because everyone is believing that if they accept everything society says, right, they will be safe. But, well, psychiatrists and psychologists have coined a new term, right? It's called, I think it was called COVID anxiety or something like that. And it's also something like COVID paranoia, right? The paranoid state that you might actually catch a disease. Not that the disease does not exist, but the point is, this fear of survival, right? Isn't this something abnormally, abhorrent? Like, let's think about you, right, and your life, and everyone else's life. We live in a world so fake that the truth scares people, right? And we live in a world in which everyone is at a competition, right? We are all in a competition, more or less, who can destroy themselves the most and then show themselves as a lighthouse for other people to come and try to fix, right? But at the same time, they are the ones who want to fix other people. And at the same time, I made a video, right, stating and presenting the idea of fixing is nothing else than trying to, terraform other people's minds, right? Just like it's happening nowadays. You have all these agendas being pushed around, and their only aim is to simply have people adjusted to the so-called needs, right? It's not that society actually cares about people, it never did. And in a society where you have all these fuckers wandering around and doing whatever they want just because they feel that the planet is only theirs and just theirs, right? You only have had, ignorant people who've done nothing else than abuse. And in a society of abused people, you'll only have abusers and abusees, right? And as this goes deeper and deeper, right, you have all the anxieties and traumas and the such, right? Thousands of years of such results, right, of ignorant living. And you have children being used in dark rituals, you have children being exploited, children used for sexual purposes, people used as toys nowadays. And, things were meant to be, used, and people were meant to be loved. But, society has reversed this as well. So the question is, what is there normal in this society? And don't you think it's kind of high time that society has, reverted itself to the normal ways that it used to be, or to the normal state that it should be, right? Because ultimately, if everything is reversed, where the heck is the truth anymore? Because if you reverse the truth, you're only going to get a lie, irrespective of how many times you try, irrespective of what you think you will be doing. Every time you reverse the truth, well, that's only going to be a lie. Because if you say it's sunny outside but it's night, well, then you're nothing else than a pathetic buffoon, right? So in a world where everything is being done just to control everyone else, because, well, society stinks of narcissism, and, well, narcissism is all about control, right? There is always this, push for all sorts of things, right? More and more ideas will come. And now there's a great division that happens, right? And it's becoming more prevalent. People are somewhat waking up towards it. But the point is, nowadays, it's been a year at least since people have, been last capable of actually, enjoying their own travels, right? And suddenly this stupid thing comes in, and, everyone is forced by law, right, to actually do something in order to be able to travel again, to breathe again. And now, finally, the ones who fell in, the rulership, let's say, of society, those are gonna be, somewhat rewarded, right? Because, well, you have to elevate those people so that, they feel now like upper class, right? There is this division happening in the world through which, technically you are not gonna be able to do much thing without, joining the game of, this game of control, right? This game in which, well, you actually finally play reality as it is truly wanted, right? You're gonna be a full-time slave, no longer one who's just pretending, right? You're no longer be this subservient human playing Stockholm Syndrome with society, right? Society tells you to vaccinate, you go and do it, right? Just because you believe that after you do it, right, you're gonna be safe. No. Even Bill Gates themselves said that by 2028 there is the risk of a greater disease coming on. So, well, most likely you have been warned, right? Because, well, you were told initially that, everything is gonna last, a few weeks, only a month, and then it was delayed. Then, well, now there's a whole year, and what has society done, right? Society hasn't done anything. And, well, you can see that it's done a great job at creating a, chaotic state on the planet, right? And now there is even further division, right? And so many people are gonna get themselves, into this game. I'm not blaming them. Everyone is free to do whatever they will, but the problem is, once you impose, anti-discernment, well, then you're an authoritarian state, right? So the question that comes is everything actually all right with this society, or have we been playing too much this game of sanity, right? Because, well, if you're playing as a, sane person, well, most likely you're not, right? It's like you're afraid of something. And what could that be? Does it actually have, something in relation to the truth, though? Because, well, the only thing in this world that people can ever fear is the truth, because, well, that's how fake they are in depth, right? So in such a society, if you think about things, right? Many people have now been fooled to, accept these ideas, right? And now they are going to be so-called rewarded, right? But the question is, there will always be something new. So should you actually keep following what society says? Because there will always be something new. How many shots will people actually take before they start realizing that, hey, it's just gonna be a charade, right? Wasn't it said at the Davos that, by, you know, 2030, you will own nothing and you will be happy? Because technically it has all begun, right? According to the so-called Ethiopian calendar, which is considered one of the oldest in the world, and you also have, the Mayan calendar that stopped in, 2012 apparently. Now, the funny thing is the Ethiopian calendar is also said to have ended, right? Because, well, 2020 in the Ethiopian calendar was also considered to be 2012, right? So it's like technically we are living the end of the world, and the rich are actually making it happen faster because, well, with people gonna commit even more suicide, we are murdering our children indirectly. Why? Well, if you force your children to live with face masks, well, that means that you're imposing their silence, because technically when you wear that face mask, that's a symbol of suppression, right? It's a symbol that society wants you to shut up, and as long as one shuts up, well, it doesn't mean anything else than consent, right? Because, well, silence usually is consent. And, well, if you want to live like life like sheep, the problem is the sheep, well, they might be cute animals and they're docile, but their only journey in life will be to the slaughterhouse, because, well, that's where we humans lead them, right? And we also lead our children into slaughterhouses, right? We take them to school where their discernment is, brought down. And do you think this is normal, right? Because how can you actually agree to something like that? How can you actually agree to your children, suffering that much? And just because they don't speak, it doesn't mean that their pains don't exist. I know a few children, right? And, well, you can actually read it in their faces, right? Even on the streets, children that I don't know, you can actually read it on their faces. You know how pained they are, but there is no one there to actually support them, right? So, question is, do you still think we live in a sane society, right? Where we actually have to be imposed rules and regulations to actually even breathe, to actually even live, right? Because you can take all the shots in the world. The point is, no one actually cares if you do or if you don't, right? If you don't and society doesn't want you anymore, well, it's not impossible to live in the wilderness. Though the point is, well, ultimately, there will always be something extra, right? Because even Elon Musk said, most of the people are already a cyborg, right? There is no such thing as, this beautiful lie of, what was it called? The moment, oh yes, the singularity, the moment when, machines supersede human intellect. The machine will never be capable of exceeding human intellect because machines don't have an evolutionary state, right? They don't have evolutionary memory. And, well, people will try to do all sorts of robots. And yes, you can build robots that can kill specific targets. You can build robots that may adapt to certain things, but it's only gonna be the same amount of code that executes itself, constantly. The point is, this is only replicating intelligence, but it is not intelligence, right? Sci-fi, we live in a world where this sci-fi is just nothing else than a little poison, right? It's giving people so many ideas in their heads, and the more they think about those, it's like they're manifesting those in this life, right? As hard as it may be to some to believe, right? But every time you see sci-fis, what is the most prominent aspect of sci-fis, right? You have dystopias. And, well, we are kind of tending very rapidly towards a dystopia because, well, we have division, we have ignorance, and, well, literally everything that there is there, right? And in a world where, everyone thinks that, they're gonna be safe, isn't it kind of nuts that society always uses this word, right? This structure for your own safety? But what happens when society actually says this is for your own safety, right? Isn't it like, it kind of sounds more like a code, right? It sounds as a code for control. Because every time something, is presented for your own safety, it is imposed upon you, right? If it were for the safety of people, if medicine was used as a tool to create safety for people, now the question is, well, why is medicine nowadays, used as a tool to treat people as if everyone is actually the same, right? As if people don't have different immunitary systems, right? As if people don't have different immunitary capabilities, right? And why is it that medics and true specialists are being cancelled, right? And banned and shadow banned, right? On different mass medias, right? Why are there so many whistleblowers telling, about gruesome plans and the such, and people who are being silenced? Well, do you ever think that society bans people because they say bullshit, or because it is a race, right? How much they can run away from the truth, right? And how much they can convince people to also do their bidding, right? And also join them in this race to run away from the truth of who you are. But the question is, can you actually run forever? Because, those who actually rule this world may or may not be people, right? They may be aliens, there may be machines, they may be whatever. It really doesn't matter much. The question is, how much do you think you can run away from this idea of the truth? Because ultimately, it is your life, not anyone else's life. The point is, if other people choose to live, in lies, well, how come we live in a society where it's no longer normal to actually use discernment, right? This has been the greatest weakness, right? The greatest disease of Europe. Because through this idea of the authoritarian regime of Christianity, right? Because it's not been anything else, right? Religion means rulership of the mind. The same thing as it is with the idea of government, right? Why do you think it's called government, right? It's governmental, right? It's about governing the mind, right? You have corporations controlling the media, right? You have corporations controlling, the idea of social networks. So the question is, the information that you are being fed, is it actually filtered, or is it actually the truth? Because many people believe in this so-called truth. But the question is, where is this truth, right? Because when you have people being banned for saying their own opinions, right? If you present your own points of views and, people don't like that, well, it's okay. But if there is a huge fight against discernment, well, that's definitely nothing else than an Orwellian state, right? That's definitely nothing else than a dictatorship, right? Just like Christianity has been. It's always been a dictatorship. Yes, beyond this idea of, the literature and, the stories about, the wonderful Jesus and the deeds, those may be real or not. It's been their life, right? If Jesus actually really existed, they may have not. Well, the question is, why would this actually happen? Jesus is a very powerful personality. Yes, it is a very powerful being to take into account. But the point is, take them as a symbol of life, right? Take them as a symbol of freedom, right? Because they actually fought against the system, just like people nowadays aren't. And many people are expecting this God, but do you think God will actually descend upon your, apartment, right? And if God would actually come, would you actually go to see them? But no, you can't. You can no longer travel nowadays. And honestly, you can't leave your place because, well, you have stuff to pay, right? Because we are the most intelligent race, but, well, think about the funny thing. We actually have to pay for our existence, right? Technically, we are paying for our own ignorance, because do you think it's normal that you have to slave your whole life and then everything that you gain in this state has to be imposited? And imposited for what? Like, at least in my country, there hasn't been done anything in 30 years and everything is in ruin, right? Because, great powers infiltrated their economical assassins and, well, the country is done for. So the point is, why would I actually worry about this, right? The country is already at the worst it can actually be, or almost there, so there's not much more to lose. It's all about the rest of the world who have been pampered and who've been living in much greater conditions. The question is, imagine Americans ending up living, like Eastern Europeans, right? How about you end up living in $500 or $600 per year, per month, right? Just like in Eastern Europe. In my country, $600 per month is even a luxury, right? And well, people kind of have to realize, right? How come we live in a world that the normal, the new normal that's been imposed, not commonly accepted? Well, it's still commonly accepted by the folks because they are ignorant and, they just follow whatever others dictate. The question is, how come we live in a world where people accept this stupid term of, social distancing? How can you be social and distant at the same time, right? Many people are believing that if you talk to someone through Skype or the such, you are being social. No, you're not being social. Socializing means communicating, right? But not communicating through machines, because most of the communication is non-verbal anyways, right? When you speak with someone, right, you shake their hands first. When you shake someone's hand, the hand actually has a chakra in there, and you actually share some energy one about the other. You may not be conscious of that, but your gut feeling, right, definitely exists. It gives you a certain sense, right? There is something over there, right? You instantly have a feeling over that other person, right? You may like them, you may not like them, right? So there is a lot beyond what people, initially think and, well, commonly accept, right? The point is, you also smile, you also use expressions, right? Facial expressions are more important than, what you actually speak, right? Because facial expressions, blow your cover. But guess what? Wearing a face mask, well, it kind of conceals that, right? If I can't see you smile, why should I trust you, right? And in the older times, who would wear masks, right? It's only criminals, right, to conceal their identity. And now everyone psychologically feels, unconsciously, they all feel like criminals, right? It is nothing else than a very advanced psychology that is being played on people, right? It's nothing else than highly advanced manipulation. Or call it black magic, if you will, because black magic and manipulation are kind of the same thing, right? And now if we think about this, right, it's like the more, the further we go in, it's like the more sick this society is, right? A society in which many corporations have actually reached the financial status that they have through exploitation of people, right? Destroying smaller businesses, right? Destroying the environment, and then they, present themselves as fighters in the name of green, right? And nowadays, what is the plan of, these billionaires, right? All you can see is them prancing around with them buying space, but that space is not for purchase. They are inventing prices, and they are theoretically paying some money to buy those prices because they are just constantly living in an unconscious state, right? Like, think about them. They have billions of dollars. 99% of the money in the world belongs to them, but they still live and purchase everything as if there's gonna be no tomorrow. Probably they know something by now, but, when you live in survival mode and you have billions, like you have all the money in the world and you purchase everything, well, it means that you're still living in survival, right? Because having money is not going to be your salvation, right? These people are still obsessed with owning things, so they only live in survival mode, right? So why is it normal that society allows, that people collectively allow such, lower level beings to actually rule over you, right? People who have all the money in the world, but they just constantly buy everything, is like they never have enough, right? Isn't this somewhat narcissistic and egotistical, right? Sooner or later, they're gonna put a price on your children as well. It's not that children aren't going missing, right? At least around 1 million children are going missing every year. Nobody seems to ask where they are going, right? But, well, distractions are a very powerful tool, right? Because, well, through distractions, you keep people away from who they are. And when you do that, everyone becomes a liar, right? In such a society where everything is a lie, well, you can't expect it to go too much further. So all this being said, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Hopefully this video was introspective enough. You are appreciated. Take care of yourselves. Ferenc Bor signing out.